in that funeral session, um, when you go, and that is, that's, end of your life. That was your funeral. People have come to pay their last respect to you. And think about what you want to leave the experience for them, right? What do your wife or husband or spouse to come and speak at that moment? What do you want your kids to come and say about you? What do you want your relatives to come and say about you? What do you want your colleagues to say about you, right? A lot of time we work in the moment, but not thinking the end in mind. So second chapter of this book talks about, think about your end of life and what do you want that to look like, and work backwards in your life. Like if you want your kids to say, my dad was very helpful, or my mom was the role model to me, thinking that. And also, like, as of today, what steps do you want to do to be that person, right? So what it says is begin with end in mind. So even though you're today, think about what that you want that to look like. Do you want your colleagues to be, hey, this person is a workaholic, or do you want them to say that this person was nice and easy to work with? Knowing those last things you want to be and working towards it is what begin with end in mind talks about. Is be creative, write your own life how you want it to be. If we don't start writing on how we want the life to be, somebody else will dictate us and make them do what they want you to do in your life, right? So it's very important as an individual to think about end in mind, and then focus on those aspects of those in life. Any questions there? Okay. And the third one is the one we'll be talking about more in depth, is put first things first. And I'll go more deeper into what that put first things first is all about. And, these first three habits in this book makes a person be from a, gives them from independent dependence to independence. So it changes the way you are. It makes them more independent and self mastery. Like you will learn about how to be as a person, how to be stronger and ready for life, and making the life, creating the way you want it to, is all the first three chapters talk about. And then the next chapters that, eventually I'll be sharing in the next sessions will be more on how to be more positive in a group, like how to make a change and be interdependence, because it's just not us all about an individual person, right? We have a lot of responsibilities across our people that we interact with, our family, our work colleagues, and how to be interdependence would be our future chapters that we will going we'll be sharing more in details in the future. And going to the next one, putting first things first. So I wanted to make this a little more interactive session, and I would like to, you guys can use the chat window. And, I wanted to talk about these four different components in life. So basically, if you look at it, there is a quadrant 1, quadrant 2, and 3 and 4. The way he stacked out is the important one and the urgent one, right? This quadrant is something which is very important in terms of it's something that there's let's say something is happening right now which you have to take care of, right? You have to cook the meals right now. It's a quadrant one. It has to happen right now. It cannot wait for tomorrow for you to take care of it. And something like there's a pressing production issue in your workplace and you have to take care of it. So those kind of ones, and they have deadlines and you cannot miss those. So those all fall in quadrant 1. And there is this one, which is important, but not urgent. Let's say you're spending time with your family, spending time with your kids, working on your professional growth or personal growth, and also looking at your health overall, right? All those fall under quadrant 2. It is not something urgent. You don't have to take care of it right this moment. But from a long-term standpoint, they really make a lot of sense for you in your life. And this one is not important, but something urgent, right? Like you're doing something, you'll get a call from somebody, and we're working on some other things, right? You just get distracted and we're doing something else. There are interruptions, and there might be some activities, or there's something going on, a live update from a channel, or you wanted to watch what's going on. And then there is this pressing matters, right, which all fall under quadrant 3. They're urgent, they're happening at that moment, but not important. They do not add value in your life a lot, for that quadrant 3. And quadrant 4 is where, let's say, there's a Facebook, checking your phones, checking your notifications periodically. It is not at all important in your life. It is not urgent, even though you do not check that message you got on the phone, WhatsApp, or email or Twitter. It doesn't matter in your life. From your long-term goal standpoint, it doesn't impact you, if you miss it. It is one of those. Sometimes it's like watching TVs, or you're just doing some activity, doesn't add a lot of value in your life there. So these are not at all urgent and not important. And I think that said, I would like to open up, and I wanted to ask, can you guys share something in your quadrant 1 that you guys can think of that you work on a daily basis? Is there any of those that you have? And I would like to just wanted to hear perspective from different people on any quadrant 1s that you have. I'll start off saying that I sometimes work on some work production issues. Somebody reaches out to me at workplace and they say, oh, I need this right away. Like, not thinking that there are other things in your wheelhouse, but I have to just jump on, and it probably takes away from what I wanted to do that day, and I'm working on those. Anyone, any other things that you guys have there in quadrant 1 that has to happen in your life? True, agreed. Taking shelter when tornado sirens are on, that's like immediate, right? You can't delay it. You can't say, can I do it tomorrow? That will not work, right? You wanted to take care of that right away. That's a good one, Satya, actually, what you
Yeah,
said.
we have the siren on now.
Oh, you are? Okay, okay. Go take care of that one then.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Do you guys have the other people? Do you guys have the same sirens around your place as well?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay, okay, okay. Maybe let me. Okay. I don't know if I have anybody else. Do you have? Let me check. Yeah. So if you have any sirens or anything that you guys have to take care of, please feel free to do so. And yeah, mostly work related. If there is something going on, right, do fall under the Q1, which is a immediate one, taking care of it, right? And do you guys have any quadrant 2 kind of ones that you run into? For personally, if I look at it, I wanted to start working out and going to gym more often personally, but I really do not spend much time in quadrant 2. Uh, yes, Divya, quadrant 1 health crisis too. Yeah, something if it's important and urgent for health related, we have to take care of that right away. Yeah. And quadrant 2, for me personally, I've seen quadrant 2 in the sense of I want to have a good health from a long-term standpoint, and I wanted to go to gym or do some activity, but it's not an urgent one. So what I tend to do is I keep pushing those out. I keep delaying, saying that, oh, it's not a quadrant 1, I'll take care of it later. And that is one of my examples, I would say. And even from a long term standpoint, right, even professionally, we want to become, let's say, if you're in a one role and you want to be a manager, but the time we spend on becoming that next role will be very less. We tend to spend more time on taking care of that issues, what's going on, rather than thinking about, I want to become this person in my life, and to do that I have to learn this, right? Writing those down and working towards that is my quadrant 2, which I currently don't do a lot, but consciously I'm writing it down and making steps to do that. Do you guys have any quadrant 2 personally that you guys have? Okay. And one of the important thing I would like to say about quadrant 2 is, according to the book in the Stephen Covey, this is the sweet spot. The quadrant 2 is the best place to be. It is not an urgent request, but it's important for your life. If you wanted to spend time with your kids, it definitely falls into quadrant 2, right? Correct. Because relationship with the kids and your spouse, it is not an urgent. You don't have to like take care of it right away. But long-term standpoint, if you wanted to leave that best moment with your kids, that's the one you're working on. And also taking care of yourself, right? It's really important. Self growth is important. And Stephen Covey talks about quadrant 2 is the main place that as an individual we have to make conscious decision to be on. And if you're not there, we probably have to spend some time and carve some time out in our day so that we are doing the right thing for our life, rather than getting overwhelmed and thinking about getting frustrated about other issues. What he talks about is Q2 is where you have to spend time on. And quadrant 3, agreed, networking. That's very important, because if you wanted to, social stress too, right? Like, you don't want to have a stressful life. You want to have a best life when you're at the end of the your journey, right? And networking is another important one too. It can be in the professional network, because if you wanted to go to the next level, that's a very important one too. If you don't invest time there, even though it's not important, right? It doesn't look like it's an important one at that moment and urgent, but it's very important, even though it's not an urgent request right there. And even your, yes, that's hobbies. Those are all quadrant 2, something which goes after your passion, your empowerment, right? What you want it to be. And that is the sweet spot in Q2. Anyone can think about Q3 that you guys run into? They are not at all important. They seem urgent, but they're not important in life for you. And some of them for me is, yeah, it's a, I would say, for me, quadrant 3 is spending time on your unnecessary stuff, right? Like, we're killing time. It is not important, but it's one of those which seems like I have to check it right away. There's a notification system which is coming on. There is like interruptions going on. There's some meetings, right? Sometimes you have these meetings which are not valuable, but oh, somebody else is going and we just end up going to those sessions. Or there is like it's just a fun stuff, right? Okay, I'm just going because the rest of the people are there. So quadrant 3 is something a lot of people who spend more time in quadrant 3 have time management issues. They think it's urgent, so I have to take care of it. It's not important, and they spend a lot of time. And if a person is in quadrant 3, they have to cautiously make an effort to move out of that quadrant. So what the Stephen Covey in this book he talks about is writing down your percentage, what you spend in each of those quadrants. And once you write those down, you have to change it. Okay, if you feel like you're spending more time in a specific quadrant, to see how you can increase the quadrant 2 time than compared to the other quadrants. So that's what he talks about. And personally, me, I sometimes go to like activities, like some engagement activities that's happening in the office because it's fun. I know it's not important. I just like happening right there, but it is not going to be something which will help me with my kids in the long term, or it doesn't help me with my networking or work life, right? Like, to be where I want, it doesn't really help there sometimes. But I'm spending time just because I like just being there, but it's very less. I spend less time in quadrant 3 personally, but those are the things we wanted to avoid, streamline it. What they say is, if you're spending time in quadrant 3, try to find an alternative. Can you delegate the task to somebody who really, it becomes it's a Q1 for them and not for you, right? So to find those people and like look for those as well too, right? Is another important one. And quadrant 4, I think this goes back to something which is more time wasting. For me, sometimes I watch some binge watching TV shows. I sit on it. There is no goal in life. There is nothing. It is just that I'm sitting there and something is going on in front of me and it just gets sucked up, right? And I forget that it's not my quadrant 2. And after reading Stephen Covey's book, I've been spending so much time when I'm, making a conscious decision that I shouldn't be in quadrant 4. If there is something I'm on my phone, I'm trying to turn off my notifications so that I don't spend on that quadrant 4. Is there any quadrant 4 activities that you guys probably do there? Me personally, what I'm doing is, if I see that I'm spending like checking TikTok or one of those YouTubes, I am consciously stopping myself and saying, this is not something I needed. I should go spend time in quadrant 1. Maybe my dishes are waiting in my sink. It is, even though it's a small one, if I don't take care of it, I know it's going to be pretty crazy if I look back into it tomorrow, right? So I change my divert my time for away from one thing and go cook or do something more useful and important. Or also lately I'm spending time with my kids too. Before, I would say, if there is a movie I would let kids watch it, I would probably do something else in that time. But looking at my long term, where I want my kids to remember me is to be there for them whenever they need me, right? I don't want to be called as my mom used to work all the time and never spend time with us. So if they are watching a movie, I spend my time by looking into quadrant 2 and making my effort of spending time with them or doing things on that. Yes, watching some jewelries or dresses and WhatsApp groups. I know that we have like so much of content right now where people are pushing and want you to check on that, right? You're in the WhatsApp group, as you said in the chat, it is so true that, when you get added, you're just going through things which are not needed in your life. Some of them we are over spending than where we want it to be, right? So in this one, I think what I would say is, if you're in quadrant 4, this is one of the quadrants. It's, it makes you relaxed a little, just talking to something or spending time, but consciously make a decision to not be in quadrant 3 much and spend some time to be in mostly in quadrant 2, quadrant 1 and 4, and then 3 if you are in that kind of situation. So try to look for quadrant 2. Any questions, anyone? Okay. And personally, what I've done is, I have done an exercise with my kids. Previously, I did not think about it, but I started explaining my kids about how putting first thing first is important. When we go tell our kids, hey, go, can you unload the dishes? And then, they're given something else, right? They end up playing and forgetting about it. So I started creating a chat, like, whole like a chart of things, and mentioned these are the things which matter, right? First things first, go take a shower. You have to do this. You have to, eat food, healthy food. And I started writing what's important. And anytime I get a chance, I go back and I talk to them about how these are important. how eating healthy food from a long-term standpoint will make them healthy, and trying to change the way they see things rather than spending in quadrant 4, which comes naturally. I am trying to share the insights, and slowly I've seen my kids are taking responsibilities, right? They are talking to me, they're saying, mommy, I did this one, and starting to come into that space of quadrant 2 rather than entering into the other phases of quadrant 4. And also explaining them, right, when you have homeworks, it is something, yeah, you have time, but if you don't want to become a quadrant 1 situation, take care of it, whenever you can, rather than delaying it or waste spending time in quadrant 4, or and having a time crunch at the last minute and making things stressful, right? So I personally started like thinking about it myself and working those towards that. And even sometimes, at work too, I have people in my team, they come to me and they're like, I'm working over the weekend, Priya, this is it looks like an accomplishment for them. And I keep telling them that, you should prioritize, in life. Work is part of our life. We cannot make work be the life, right? And I always insist on changing the perspective of not making that working on it, but knowing when to work on it, and what is your purpose, right? If you're expected to work during that time, just give the best and then move on. And so in this book, Stephen Covey talks about this important aspect. Once we start working on these and realizing it, we'll make more sense on quadrant 2. So I've been spending more time in like I think Satya was mentioning networking, meeting with the people who will where it's needed, right? And delegating the task which can be given to other people where it's where it makes a quadrant 1 for them, in those situations are really important. And I think I want to, last question I wanted to ask for you personally, if you have to rank your quadrants, what are the quadrants you personally feel that you're spending more time on? And give me you can just say quadrant, 1, 2, whatever you have. Just write all those quadrants down, if you can, in the chat. I just wanted to see how it is today and where you want it to go to in the future. I'm going to start with mine. I spend more time in quadrant 1 right now, quadrant 4, quadrant 2, and comes quadrant 3 for me today. This is how I do it. But I'm shifting the priorities right now so I can make it Q1, like these changes. So in the future, I want it to look somewhat like this, so that it's more aligned with my long-term goals than my short-term situations, from that standpoint. Okay. And I'll move on to the next slide. Um, And I wanted to leave you guys all with, one important takeaway, right? In the Stephen Covey's book, he says, focus on quadrant 2. That's the long-term goal. And also, it's very important for you to think about your end of life situation, which is the habit 2, and seeing what matters there, right? Write those down. So one exercise for you guys, when you have some time, write it down. Write one thing that you could do in your life on a regular basis that would make a tremendous positive difference in your personal life. If you have to make a change, what would that be? There's one thing, not do, just pick one thing that you wanted to do, and it'll change a lot in your life. Personally, for me, being healthy and doing some exercise is one of the important ones I personally felt in my life, that I wanted to add it in my daily routine. Like if I do that, I feel like I'm more calmer because I do meditation, and I'm able to stay controlled on what the situations are, at the same time having a long term health benefits on that front, right? So mental and physical health is what I wanted to focus on, to have a best positive outcome in my life. And I would say do that exercise personally. Just write that down, and every time you're getting detoured, look at that question and say, my personal goal in my life, this one habit, and this is what it is. And check yourself, every few months, and see if you're still doing a better job, or good, better than what you were before, or aligned there. And until you get perfection, right? If you do for a long duration of time, it becomes a habit, and it ingrains in yourself. And also the same thing when your professional life too. Write one thing you wanted to do in your professional life that would bring similar results as your personal life, and write that down too. So for me, when I did this exercise, I personally wrote on self development as one of the item, because most of the time I have been focusing on what's happening at workplace at that moment, or somebody's messaging you, rather than thinking about my long term personal goal, right? So it's important to write your own personal goals as well too. So this is one of that, which is very important. And put first things first is as simple as that. Once you know these, then you will start putting that first thing which matters the most in your life first, compared to the other things which are happening in life, and being more successful. So the people who have used these habits in life have been very successful in personal life and professional life as well too. I was surprised after reading this book. I ran into a lot of people that have used these components in life, these habits in life. And anytime I work with them, they're the best people to work with. And I was so surprised on how can a person be so amazing. I thought they were born that way. But then knowing them as I went along, I found out that they've read this book and have been incorporating these good habits into their work life, and also personal life as well too, which is making them look more polished and very well taken from a self care aspect as well. So with that, I would leave you guys with this, write those information down, and hope this helped you guys. And I'll give this back to any questions, anyone. And thank you all for taking time and spending time with me here. And I'll stop sharing my screen and give it back to the host here.
Thank you, Priya. Very informative. And one thing I can think about my personal goal would be nature, being with the nature and being in silence. That's what I crave the most. But I'm
Mhm,
not at all doing it these days. So
mhm.
maybe that will be my first thing first to be done.
Correct, correct. Yeah, it's just that knowing that, right? Sometimes we get detoured, but writing those down and bringing ourselves back to that is a very crucial and important thing. And thinking about that quadrant too, right? Hey, I wanted to be in that space, and I have to do it. It automatically gets into our system. So
Yes, Priya, so true. Yes, yes. Yeah, anyone wants to share anything? You want to share your goals, personal and professional goals? It's a good way to tell yourself when you share it outside. It's a good way to that you're telling to yourself or committing to yourself.
mhm.
So kindly share.
Yeah, and I think that's one what Divya just mentioned, right? Like if we don't share, um, I think the more we listen from ourselves, right, the more we speak to ourselves and open up and share it with others, it makes us accountable for that specific one, right? What are we sharing? We strongly it gets into your brain and start you work towards it. So yeah, I'll let you guys. Anyone wants to share? Yeah, no judgment. I mean, there's, it's all